It's time for another recent reads video, and I finally got a 5-star read. Also, one of my most disappointing reads. So if you want to know what those are, get yourself a snack and or beverage, and let's get ready to talk about them. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Nakia. Welcome to my channel. So yes, it is time to talk about everything I've read since my last recent reads video, which is pretty much a lot of June and some of July. And as I said in the intro, I have a 5-star book. I have a 2-star book that was one of my most anticipated books of this year. I have a 4-star and some other things sprinkled in between. So without further ado, let's just get on into these books. Now, if you are new here, I like to start with the books that were the most disappointing and or DNFs and work my way all the way up to the highest rated books I've read in the month, which in this case, we have a 5-star. So let's start with my most disappointing book that I read recently, and that was, drumroll, The Marriage Act by John Marrs. Now, I have loved a lot of John Marrs books. I haven't read everything. I have not read any of his mystery thriller books, but of his speculative thrillers, The Passengers, The One, I have read those, loved those. Both of those were like 4 or 5-star books for me. So I was really looking forward to The Marriage Act because it seemed like it was going in the same direction as those. Like I said, speculative, but you already see this is one of the first books I'm talking about, so it didn't go so well for me. Now, I read this book for the Midnight Society Book Club hosted by Elizabeth from Reading Riley, and I was a co-host for the month of June for the live book club discussion, which I will have linked below. So I'm not going to go too deep because we did that in the live show. But basically what I knew going in was that this book dealt with something called the Marriage Act, which is where marriage is kind of enforced, but they give you incentives to make you want to participate in this Marriage Act, like cheaper housing, better schools. They put people in like little communities. And if you're single, you don't get those benefits. I thought this was going to be more like people get punished for being single, but it's not really that kind of thing. You can be single. You just won't have, like I said, all the benefits of the people who participate in this Marriage Act. And we also knew there were going to be a bunch of different characters, different POVs, which I liked in The One. So I thought this was going to be similar to that. And I also knew going in that this was part of the universe of The One and The Passenger. So those things are mentioned in this book. Do I think you need to read those beforehand? Not necessarily, because they're kind of explained, or to me, you kind of get what happens in those books based on what is mentioned in this one. But I mean, it would probably be helpful to have a little extra backstory, So for me, this one was just too damn long. I said this in the live show. I feel like this book could have been split into 2 parts. I feel like John Marrs tried to tackle a lot because this book was not really about like drama with the couples and how they were dealing with the Marriage Act. It was more like foundational stuff, like getting to know what this Marriage Act was all about and explaining all the different rules and laws and regulations. I don't care about that stuff. This one also did not have the drama and the juice of The One. Like The One was like a soap opera. It was just so much going on with the different couples. I was just flipping pages, couldn't wait to see what was going to happen next. Not with this one. It did not have the suspense of The Passengers. The Passengers was more action. It also had some mystery going on too, but it was a lot of action and it was just felt high stakes. Didn't get that with this one either. Nothing felt high stakes. I did not care for any characters. There was one that I literally could not stand. She was a social media person, specifically doing YouTube. And I mean, I do this for fun as a hobby, so I can't relate to somebody where this is just like their everything and it's just die hard and I will do anything for this. It's not me. I do it for fun because I like to talk to you guys about books and participate in the community, but I have a job and I have other things, so I just could not relate to her, and she just was so annoying. But like I said, there was only one character I liked and he had a special place in my heart, but it was not enough of him for me to be struggling through this book. This one was way more political in terms of current day social issues. Like that was what I liked about The One and The Passengers. Because they're speculative, they deal with fictional scenarios and things that can happen. Of course, like human nature, that goes no matter what time period you're in. But this one was just dealing with too many current day things that I was not here for. I will say something involving 2020 was mentioned, like stuff like that I did not want in this book. And yeah, I went into that a little bit more in the live show, but if you like that kind of thing, you will prefer this. I didn't want that, so took off some stars for that. And as I said, this book just dragged on for me. If I was not reading this for the book club, I don't know if I would have been able to finish it. It did not pick up to me until chapter 53. I said chapter, not page 53. That tells you This book was 497 pages on my Kindle. Like I said, too damn long. But for now, that's all I'm going to say about this. If you want to know more of my thoughts and to hear a well-rounded discussion, you can get the point of view of others who enjoyed it more than me, but I will have a link to that below. For me, this was a 2-star book. And I will say, I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about his next book because all the politics that was put in this, it just rubbed me the wrong way. So I'm going to be leery of his future books. I hope he does not do that again, but I don't know. Again, this was very disappointing for me. It did not have the vibes of The One and The Passengers. So yeah, let's move on. All right, and next up we have book 6. I had to look to see. Oh my goodness, I am tackling some series lately. Book 6 in the Helldiver series, Allegiance by Nicholas Sansbury Smith. And I think I said I was going to stop with this series like in book 4, but I just love the audiobooks by R.C. Bray. I've said this 1,000 times. This was no exception. I enjoyed the audiobook. Story-wise, meh. I don't know if I'm going to continue because I do have some other audiobooks lined up that I'm looking forward to reading. So I usually just revert back to this as a comfort because again, I always enjoy the way he reads the audiobook. But if you don't know, this is a sci-fi horror series. We are following groups of people that are called Helldivers, and this is a post-apocalyptic world. It's supposed to be like after World War III, and the world has been decimated by nuclear explosions and stuff like that. So the last of humanity are up in airships, and they have these Helldivers who dive down to the surface to look for parts and things to keep the ships running. So that's basically what you need to know. In the first book, we were following a main character, Xavier Rodriguez, and I loved the first book. I'm pretty sure I gave it 5 stars. It was one of my favorite books of the year that I read it. And so the saga has continued. I won't say much more because I don't want to spoil anything. But I will say this reminded me of the Walking Dead series if you watch it or you know much about it, where the first few seasons we focus a lot on the zombies, walkers, and how the humans are dealing with them. And then the longer you go, like the zombies are just like nothing. Like they're like a gnat just in the way, and you're mainly dealing with the humans and their drama and them trying to maintain a society and then these different factions and all. Yeah. So this seems to be going in that direction. In this book, that's kind of what we got, where things are a little more settled and people are, there's politics getting involved with who's going to be in charge, and it just didn't really interest me. And also it's just more characters get introduced, and just listening to the audiobook, I'll admit I probably can't follow along as well because names are just difficult for me in real life in general. So just listening and hearing all these different names, it just weren't sticking. I really was just keeping an eye on the main characters that I remember from the first few books, and then all these new folks was just like, who is this again? Sure. What I liked about the first book was the creepiness of the sirens, and then we had all this drama going on in the airship and, mutiny and that kind of stuff, and that's just missing for me in these later books. So for this one, I'm going to give the audiobook 3 stars because, again, I enjoyed it. I always do. It's R.C. Bray, but again, I will not say I was completely following along with the story. It just got I was just going along for the ride. I really didn't care. I wasn't invested. But for the actual story, just the book, if I was just reading this, just the book alone, I would say 2 stars. So I'm going to put them together and do 2.5 stars. I'm probably going to round up to 3 because I can't do anything less than that for Helldivers. So again, I'm probably going to stop here. I can't say for how long. If I run out of some audiobooks, I'll probably pick up book 7 somewhere in the future. But for right now, this is where I'm going to pause. So let's move on to my next one. Okay, now before I get to my highest rated books that I've read in recent months, I will talk about a couple children's books. You already know Berenstain Bears is going to be a part of this. I will have chapter marks so you can skip ahead. I understand if you don't want to hear about the children's books, but I love illustrated children's books, and so I've been picking up some lately. More so Berenstain Bears because that's what I grew up on, but this one I'm getting ready to talk about actually caught my attention on my library site, and the cover just got my attention, as I said, because it looked so cute. And this one is called Spring is for Strawberries. I have to hold it a certain way so you can see because my ring light. But yeah, I thought this was so cute. Look at it. So cute. Yeah, so I'll just read you a little bit what it says on the inside. Celebrate the changing seasons at the farmer's market. Over the course of a year, 2 friends explore the delicious local flavors of food grown close to home. That pretty much sums it up. This book is just so cute. It's one of those ones, where it's rhyming, it's for kids, and you pretty much just learn all the seasonal fruits and vegetables that go along with each season, and we go through all 4 seasons. There is a fall portion, and oh my goodness, we got the pumpkin patch, and tickled me. I wish this whole book was about fall, but that's not what we got. And it just ended abruptly for me. Like I said, I wanted it to be a little bit longer, but this, I know it's for kids and their attention span is not as long, but this was very cute. I think if you have like little 2-3 year olds, I'd recommend this. For me, you know, as I said, it was cute. I was probably a little too old for this. But it's cute. Let's move on. And in case I haven't said, I do not rate children's books because I am not the target audience, clearly. So I just read them again for the illustrations and for my entertainment, but I do not rate them. Sometimes on Goodreads, I'll put like a little sentence of how I felt about it overall. If I don't put anything, it just means because it was cute and that's what we're looking for. It's children's books. So now we have Berenstain Bears, and I actually have 4 of them here that I picked up from my library. I'm so happy they have them. It's so fun for me to revisit these from my childhood. But first up, we have the Berenstain Bears and the In Crowd. I mean, this is pretty much what you would think. It's Sister Bear trying to fit in. You can see that from the cover. It's like these new girls come in, these bears, and they're more like, you know, into, as you see, the music, and they're on their bicycles and whatnot, and jumping rope, whatever. It was fine. It was cute. Sister Bear's trying to fit in. Of course, you know, moral of the story is she's fine just the way she is and that kind of thing. So, I mean, I almost forgot what this was about because I read this in June, but again, cute. Nothing spectacular. Next up, we have the Berenstain Bears Forget Their Manners. With these books, the titles always tell you what it's about. But yeah, Mama Bear is fed up that mainly Sister Bear and Brother Bear are having an issue with manners, but Papa Bear has some issues too. It's like everybody had a lesson to learn but Mama Bear. She's fine. But yeah, so I mean, once again, cute. They learned their lesson as always. There's always actually something that surprises me. And with this one, it was that Papa Bear had to learn that, you know, like I said, he had some things that he needed to learn himself. I love how these books teach lessons. I don't know if you get that these days from children's books, but this is the kind of stuff I grew up on. And I think it probably did have an effect on me as a child. But yeah, so again, cute. It's self-explanatory. Next, we have the Berenstain Bears Get in a Fight. It's funny because all of these books were kind of negative. When I was looking at them and trying to decide what I wanted to read, I was like, do I want to read about getting in a fight, forgetting manners, or lying? I was like, let me just pick one. But I read these all on the same day. But yeah, so this one is funny. It started off kind of mean-spirited to me because Brother Bear and Sister Bear get in a fight, as it says in the title. And the stuff they were saying to each other, I was like, oh no, let's not fight. But that was so short. So luckily we moved on past that to them just like being irritated, not speaking to each other and that kind of thing. And this one had a rainstorm. Just tickled me because you don't know, I love the rain. So I love that we got this. Anytime I come across something new in these Berenstain Bear books, illustrations wise, it always tickles me. And what I loved about this one was that it made an analogy to a rainbow coming after the storm and it being like making up after a fight. So cute. I adored this. And then my last one is the Berenstain Bears and the Truth. So this one is one that I actually remembered from my childhood. I remember seeing the episode for this. I had to go look it up before I did this, and I now know this is from season 2, episode 5. There was a Berenstain Bears show. I think we used to borrow them from the library, which I'm gonna see if my library has it because I have to relive this. It just came back to me just reading this. But in this one, Brother and Sister Bear are playing with a soccer ball in the house. They break Mama Bear's lamp and she comes home. Brother Bear hides the soccer ball and lies and says, I won't tell you in case you want to read it, but Brother Bear lies and Papa Bear ends up catching him in the lie. And of course, they have to learn the lesson about telling the truth and how people will not trust you. As we all know, this one also had an analogy because the lamp got broken at the very end. The lamp is pieced back together. And the last thing it says is, but they never ever again told a whopper because trust is one thing you can't put back together once it's broken. I love it. So yeah, I adored this. I probably will have to own a copy eventually because it just brought back so many memories. Sorry, you can't see this one. It's the yellow. It's doing too much. So anyway, that is it for my Berenstain Bear books and children's books section. I'm grateful to Ashley from the Bookish Realm for making videos where she talks about children's books because it made me feel more comfortable with reading children's books and talking about them on my channel. If it wasn't for her, I probably would be trying to read these in secret. But read what you want, what brings you joy. If it's a comic book, magazine, just as long as you're reading. And these do bring me so much joy. So yeah, hope you get that from this part of the video. But anyway, let's move on to what you probably came here for, my 4 and 5-star read. It looks like I'm saying 9, but you know, let's get to those. So now we're gonna roll into the books that I read for Summerween. So look at this. The 2 highest rated books I read were for Summerween. So Summerween was very successful for me this year. And if you don't know, Summerween is a readathon hosted by Gabby from Gabby Reads and Olivia from Olivia Reads a Latte. And it's basically about a week where we celebrate Halloween a little bit early and read spooky, thriller, mystery, horror books. And this year they included manga and novella novellas, and you know, they have prompts and things, and it was just so much fun. And so, like I said, I'm so glad I did it this year. I really got in the spirit. I had my fall candle lit, fall atmosphere on the TV. I'm so ready for fall and spooky season. So the first book I'm going to talk about for Summerween is actually the last book I read for Summerween, and it is Gray Noise by Marcus Hawk. Now, I actually saw this book like out there in Goodreads land and whatnot, but it wasn't until I watched Jason from Jason's Weird Reads. I watched a try a chapter video that he did where he tried a chapter from this book, and that was when I was like, I want to read this. I went and looked at a sample. I was into the writing, and so I decided to pick it up. It was a novella, so I was like, it's short and sweet. We can get through this during the Summerween time. And I will have Jason's video linked below. In case you don't know about Jason, he reads a lot of horror. He has been around in the BookTube community for a while. Like before I started, he was one of the first channels I started watching, and he reads weird horror that you've never heard of, indie horror, all that good stuff. So again, I will have him linked below, as well as his try a chapter video, so you can see what I'm talking about. Now, in Gray Noise, we follow a man named Evan who has just opened up a retro video store called Rewind Video. And then one day while he's out driving, he sees this old vacuum tube TV on the side of the road, and it has a note on it that says free. So he decides to pick it up and take it back to his video store because he's like, this will fit perfectly with my ambiance, what I'm going for, this retro vibe. But of course, this is a horror novella, so this is no ordinary TV. Now, like I said, I really didn't know what I was getting into, so I was just along for the ride. And as I said, it started with the writing. I loved it. I actually wanted to read you a small little sample of some of his writing because, like I said, I just loved it. And this is giving you some of the atmosphere that we got in the very beginning. A muggy haze from the heat gave the buildings of downtown a sort of sweltering, mirage-like quality in the distance. A thick layer of smog clung to the air above like a stain on the sky. It was as nice a view a concrete jungle like this could afford. Again, I was just highlighting so much of his writing because I just enjoyed it. It also had some humor in the very beginning. It was not messing up the vibes because, again, you're setting up the story, so I was enjoying the humor. I was actually laughing out loud. I was highlighting some of that stuff too. And I will say this novella is a very interesting take on a possession story, especially involving an object, and I was here for it. Now, what's interesting about this novella that I really liked was that the character Ethan is really having a hard time with life and just frustrated with so many things, and he starts thinking about the way society is and just a lot of things that I think about and a lot of things that I agreed with, and maybe things you've thought about, but things that deal with social media and the way the world is going these days because of social media, which is why I say unplug as much as possible. But yeah, I loved all the commentary the writer had for those portions. Now, don't think this is just, you know, some little like, yeah, this TV, you know, there's some bad stuff that happens. It actually got pretty dark and pretty gory to where I was like, wow, we went there. Yes, we did. But I do not shy away from gore. I usually just don't like certain things, like things happening to the kids that involve like anything sexually weird with kids. I don't like, you know, rape, stuff like that. I do not enjoy in horror. I don't like. But like I said, when it comes to just gore, bodily things, I'm always here for that. I love it in horror movies. And so it tickled me that this was in this. I was glad he went there because I was like, wow, ew. So because this is a novella, I don't want to say too much, but overall I was pretty pleased with this, pleasantly surprised. I was always happy to pick it up, and yeah, as I said, I pretty much enjoyed it. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I would say the only reason it's not 5 stars for me is because there were things that were just so memorable that I probably will never forget, and then there were things that I did forget, and that was more towards the beginning when he was just working at the video store. You know, that kind of dragged down a little bit for me, but just a little bit. Otherwise, I enjoyed this book so much, and I'm so glad I read it because it reinvigorated me for the horror genre. If you're new here, when I started my channel, I was just like so into the horror genre and trying to read as much horror as I could. And then that's when I started to realize, like, I don't know, I have an issue with a lot of horror books. So I kind of backed off of it and, you know, been focusing more on other genres, mainly thriller mysteries, but I also do some sci-fi and fantasy. Again, I was sprinkling some horror here and there, and I'm so glad I read this one because it makes me want to read more stuff like this. This was more up my alley. So anyway, like I said, 4 stars. And let's move on to the 5-star book, which you probably already know right now because you've seen the thumbnail and there's only 1 book left. All right. Last but definitely not least, we have my first 5-star book of the year. Oh my goodness, it took till July. I feel like this happens to me every year. I watch other people's videos where they say like one of their favorite books of the year came from a book they read in January, and I'm like, that never happens to me. It's always like July till towards the end of the year. But anyway, it happened and I'm so glad, and I'm also so surprised. And that book is The Only One Left by Riley Sager. And guess what? This is my copy. Who am I? If you don't know, I don't really own a lot of physical books. I am one where I mainly read books from my library, or I pick them up on my Kindle because I don't know. I've just always been one to use the library, and it's just a little weird to me to buy a book that I haven't read yet. I don't like wasting money. So generally if I buy a book, it means I loved it and I want to reread it again in the future. So here we are. But in case you don't know, in this book, we are following a young lady named Kit, who is a caregiver, and she has been assigned to care for a woman named Lenora Hope, who is shut away in her mansion high up on the cliff. And what we know about Lenora is that one night, all of her family was murdered, her father, her mother, and her sister, and she was the only one left. So of course, people think she is the one who committed the crimes, but there was no evidence to convict her. So she's just shut away in her house and pretty much a recluse. But also over the course of time, these murders happened in the 1920s. It is now supposed to be the 1980s in this book. She has had a series of strokes and other health problems that have left her paralyzed and unable to speak, except for the use of her left hand. And when Kit goes to work for her, Lenora decides to type her story on the typewriter and let her know what happened that night. And in case you don't know, I did a whole spoiler review about this book, which I will link. Where does it go? I will link here. And so I'm not going to go too deep into this because I went into everything in that video. I go over all the plot twists, how I felt about them, all that good stuff. So you can go check that video out. But I did not read the little poem that goes along with this book in that video. So this is what it says. At 17, Lenora Hope hung her sister with a rope, stabbed her father with a knife, took her mother's happy life. It wasn't me, Lenora said, but she's the only one not dead. It also says, best-selling author Riley Sager returns with a deliciously twisty and addictive gothic chiller about a young caregiver assigned to work for a woman accused of a Lizzie Borden-like massacre decades earlier. So yes, we also have that aspect of the Lizzie Borden type story. So let's get into it. Now, I'm surprised I even picked up this book because I said after The House Across the Lake that I was done with Riley Sager. I gave that book 1.5 stars. I did not like it. It was a struggle to get through it. I only got through it because I was participating in a book club discussion. And so I was like, I have to get through this book, but it was a struggle. I did not like the main character. I didn't like most of the plot twists. I struggled. But I was like, if this is the direction he's going to be going in, we are done here. And I said that I was not going to read his next book unless I started hearing mostly good feedback. So that's what happened. I started hearing rumblings in the streets about this being a good book. And I still was like, I ain't reading it. I'm still not reading it. And then again, I kept hearing some good things. And I was like, well, let me see what this book is about. And so when I looked at the synopsis, I was like, well, that sounds different. That sounds intriguing. And then I read a little bit of the sample, and that was what did it for me. I was getting the gothic vibes, which was something we have not had from Riley Sager. I would say not really since Lock Every Door. Yes, it's in Home Before Dark too, but I really felt it more in Lock Every Door. So I was like, okay, you got me. And then a fellow booktuber and buddy of mine, Kasha from Kasha's Book Cemetery, she reached out to me and was like, do you want to do a buddy read for the Riley Sager book? And I was like, okay. I also knew no one knew I was reading this, so it was just fun to be reading this with her and have no pressure, no expectations, because I was just doing it for fun. And we had so much fun with this book. We were just going back and forth. It was so fun to be talking about plot twists with her, and we really broke this book down. Like, we went there. If you don't know who Kasha is, I will have her linked below. She reads a lot of horror, YA horror, and I mean all kind of stuff that I've never heard of, but like I said, mainly focusing on horror. She also reviews horror movies. So I will have her booktube channel linked below, as well as her movie review channel. But like I said, we had so much fun reading this book, and I mainly did it with the physical book. I did not have this one. I mainly did it with the Kindle version because, again, I wasn't going to spend money on a physical book when I didn't know if I was going to like it. But I did use the audiobook for Lenora's typed portions of the book, because when I listened to the audiobook, I was not really here for the narrator who did Kit's voice, but Lenora is an older woman, 70 something. And so the narrator for her was an older woman, or at least she sounded like it. And I really liked what she did. So whenever I would get to her parts, I'd be like, wait, let me get the audiobook. And I enjoyed doing it that way. Now, like I said, I loved that this took place in the 80s. I am a child of the 80s, if you don't know. And I really loved all the flashbacks we got to the 1920s, because I love historical fiction. It is from like that early 1900s period of time. Love it. And like I said, it was so gothic and and atmospheric. I know other people have said it starts off slow. It was not slow for me because I just love the vibes. I was here for it. If you want it to be a little bit more fast paced, then I would say this probably will drag for you in the beginning. But again, I was all into the vibe, so it was perfect for me. So yeah, because of that, I'd say this one is more for those of you who loved Lock Every Door and Home Before Dark. Now, I did enjoy Survive the Night. I am one of the outliers. It was not top of the list, but I did enjoy it. I didn't hate it like other people. But this is definitely more like Lock Every Door and Home Before Dark. And Lock Every Door was my favorite until I got to this one. This one just had so much family drama with, oh my goodness, servants and maids going on in the house from when Lenore was a teenager. And then we also had some family drama between the main character Kit and her dad. So all these secrets and lies, I just loved it. And then I'm sure you have heard by now, there are just so many plot twists in this book. I know for some people, they thought it was too much, and especially towards the end, they thought it was just so much at once. I loved it. I mean, mouth hanging open for some plot twists. Like I said, I talk about all this in my spoiler review, but like I said, my mouth was dropped open. I did guess too, but the rest, took me by surprise. And I don't care if they all made sense. I ended up giving this book 5 stars. Yes, it did, because of my enjoyment factor. I just had a good time with this book. And again, if you have plot twists that I can't guess, that also gets me. It also made me emotional. I can't go into that because it's spoilers, but there's some things that had happened to Lenore when she was a child. And I mean, like I said, those things made me emotional. The ending was touching for me too. So if you can make me cry, that also will elevate a book for me, and all of that, just like I said, made this 5 stars. So Riley Sager is back to being one of my favorite mystery thriller writers. He is the reason why I am doing my channel. I've talked about this a million times, but Lock Every Door was the first book I had read in decades probably, and I loved it. It made me want to get on BookTube and make videos. It made me want to continue reading, and here I am 3 years later, still at it. I can't believe it. So I will always have a special place in my heart for Riley Sager. I'm sorry I doubted him. I admit it. I even watched an interview that he did talking about this book, and that made me appreciate it even more. Just hearing his thought process and the things he was trying to do, I loved it. For me, the measure of a good book is while I'm reading, I will start wondering how the author came up with all this stuff. Did they do storyboards? Did they write down notes? If I start thinking about that, that means we got a winner. And I was really wondering how he came up with all this stuff. But like I said, I got a lot of answers in that interview. If you want, I can post a link to that below. But like I said, 5 stars. Definitely favorite book that I've read recently. And right now, it is a contender for top books of the year. So I am so surprised. I know you are, because I am. So that is it, my beautiful people. All the books that I have read recently, like I said, during the months of June and July. Of course, as always, let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books, what you have to say about them, spoiler free, of course. I am really curious to know if you've read the new Riley Sager book, and if you liked it or you didn't. Were you surprised in a good way or a bad way? I know a lot of us have already talked in my spoiler review video comment section, but I still want to know for those of you who didn't watch, because I understand it had spoilers, so you may not have wanted to watch, but you know, like I said, let me know. Or if you plan to read it, I'm curious. Also, let me know how you felt about the Marriage Act. If you loved it, didn't like it, agree with me. Again, I'm just sorry it was a disappointment for me. I wish I enjoyed it more than I did. And as always, if you don't have a comment about any of these books that I talked about, but you just want to let me know that you made it this far in the video and or show me some love, everyone can show me some love by leaving me an emoji. I love to know that you made it this far and I'm not just talking to hear myself talk. For this one, let's go with a blue heart for the blue font on the cover. This is like a bluish, yeah, it's blue. Let's go with the blue heart for the blue font on the cover of The Only One Left. And also, ways to support my channel will be linked below. You can donate towards coffee, tea, more books, all that good stuff. And also, I will have all of these books linked below. And as a matter of fact, I think Gray Noise is on Kindle Unlimited. So that's good to know too. You can read it for free. And I think that is it for this video, my beautiful people. So until next time, snuggle up in your hideaway with a good book like The Only One Left. Unplug as much as possible. Be kind to all kind. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.